Hi, welcome to Guitar Talk. My name's Stan Biankowitz, and to my right, your left is Ken Unak, and to my left, your right is Mr. Mark Armstrong, and we're going to be doing blues again, but we're going into a little bit more towards substitutions and other things that can happen that now has made blues get a little more jazzier, I can say, I suppose. Well, let's enjoy. We're listening to Cut by Brownie McGhee. Perfect, guys.
Okay. So we're going to start talking about chord substitution today.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Yes. And
you are correct, sir.
What we just played was what I want to say is a really early example of chord substitution. It's a Brownie that we played, a Spartan Life Blues by Brownie McGhee, and he wrote that when he was 15 years old. So, wow. And it was recorded, I guess, back in the 30s or late 20s. I'm not sure on that. It's the one that Dave Van Ronk wouldn't play because he thought he had to be real old to play it because of the words.
Oh, really?
And he asked Brownie McGhee when he finally met him, you know, hey, how old were you when you wrote that? And Brownie said 15 years old.
Oh, gee.
But it's an example of I think, an early example. It's an 8-bar blues. Which is something we haven't looked into yet either. Yeah. So
well, let's go through it on the guitar. Let's see what it looks like.
It starts out with a straight E chord to an E7 for the second bar. So here's the first little hint that something's different. We come to the A, but with a 9 on it. Add 9. Right. And then he puts a minor chord, E. And here's where he starts to do 5 of 5, to do an F sharp, a C sharp 7, to an F sharp 7, B7 to 1, and this nice little turnaround.
The kid was a genius.
You know, I mean, and we don't hear these 9s really till a lot later.
Oh, I know. You know, and then the same
with the substitution.
The substitution.
The 5 C sharp to the F sharp 7, B7 to 1.
Well, that's going to become a staple of jazz.
Yeah, and that
1-6-2-5.
So is the 4 chord going to a 4 minor? That's another.
Yeah, 4 to the 4 minor.
All over.
So this was real early. You know.
Well, when was he born? So we could figure
I don't know the date when he was born.
When he was 15.
But he, put it this way, it was recorded. I didn't start recording till, I think the first blues is 1923 or something like that. Right. That right in that era. So he recorded it shortly, maybe within 10 years of that. You know, so I don't know how old he was, but he wasn't 15.
But to write it at 15, that's a pretty incredible piece.
Yeah, right. And he fits it into an 8-bar format, you know, and it's perfect. It's a beautiful song, you know, and it's those little substitutions that make it have that. There's like an inherent melancholy. Feeling to it. You know?
Well, it creates twists and turns for the ear to move with, which creates interest, and that's why it sounds so great, is because it's so interesting to listen to.
Yeah, you know? I think actually on a lead that he does to it, he puts that in, and that becomes something we hear
that's
all
very
the
common.
time.
Yeah.
You know, but there it is real early. So to get on with the chord substitution,
do we have the changes here on that?
On Brownie?
Yeah, on Brownie.
Actually, we do.
No, that's not.
Let me just put them
Spartan
up on
Life
the.
Blue. That's the changes.
Let me see if I can get that up on the screen. For incredible.
I didn't write the turnaround in. I just sketched out the changes there.
Right, there we go. So that way you guys can reference this at your leisure. Set your recorder on pause, or actually your DVD player on pause.
Okay.
Shall I put this up?
Yeah, well, yeah, in a minute.
Okay.
In a minute. Yep.
I think where we need to start, and I'm basing this on the way I wandered into trying to understand chord substitution.
Sure.
I started out basically looking at the diatonic triads, or seventh chords. What function do they have? There's only 3 functions, really. They can either have this tonic sound if we're in C here. You can have a C and that's like the home bass sound with this C here.
Yeah.
Or they can have a subdominant sound with this F. Or they can have a dominant sound, the chords, okay?
Exactly.
And in blues, we have three areas. Well, let me go back with the diatonic chords. So we have 7 chords in a key in
Yes.
C. So what chords would have a tonic sound? And if we look at each chord, we have C, E, G, 3 notes here.
Yeah.
The next tonic sound we might get would be from an A minor.
Yes.
It's got only 1 note difference. And if we actually, is the A minor, and if we add the C, we've got a C6 in
That's
the
correct.
bass. So the C in A minor really haven't gone anywhere.
Well, that's why the relative minor is the relative minor. Yeah.
Okay. Then the next one would be an E minor.
Right.
And if we look at that closely, well, all we have to do is add a C in the bottom, and that's a C major 7.
Yes.
So it's a tonic chord also.
That's correct.
So what in blues we only have 3 little areas that well, in all tunes really, but they go from key to key. The next is the subdominant area, and we have an F, or we could have a D minor.
That's correct.
And the last thing is dominant, and we can have the G7 with the tritone in it, or you can have a B minor 7 flat 5 if it's a 7th chord, which has the tritone in it.
Why don't we do in the key of C, Ken? Would you mind demonstrating?
Well, if you would hold that up first, so
Okay.
people can see what we're doing.
Okay.
We're taking the blues.
Well, I was
And-
going to ask would be to do a simple chord substitution. So do 1, 4, 5, and then do 1 minor 2, 5. Oh, I'll do it.
You do it.
Okay.
Yep.
So what we're going to do is we're going to substitute one subdominant chord for another subdominant chord. The subdominant chord being in the key of C would be the 4 chord, which would be F. The 2 minor is the relative minor, by the way, of the F chord, which is why we can also use it as a
Exactly.
substitution. And here we go. We're just going to do C, F, G, C. All right, now I'm going to do C, D minor, G. Not very far off, is
Now
it?
do A minor to D minor to G.
Okay.
Yeah, yep. So, yep. So what you have is basically major and minor versions of the sounds. You have the tonic, the subdominant, dominant sound, and in the key, that's 6 of the chords get thrown that way.
That's right.
You do have a few interesting chords. The E minor chord, the 3 chord in the key of C.
Well, let's go over to this.
Well, if we're going to do that, then we're going to have to be in a different key.
Okay, all right.
So let's wait for a second. Yeah, let's finish this thought up. So the E minor chord, when you're learning songs, this is what I've always said. I say, and I go, it's what the is that chord? Because every time I hear that chord, it's like, wait a minute, what is that chord? Because that chord has characteristics of the tonic area, but it also has characteristics of the dominant area. It has a leading tone.
Right, right.
Yeah,
And the
does.
leading tone is what makes it very ambiguous. So it's kind of the chord, like I said, when I'm learning a song, you're learning it. What's that chord? What's that chord? And so it's always, what's that chord? Oh, it's a 3 chord, yes. And it almost always ends up being the 3 chord, is the odd one. So one thing I look at when I'm looking at subdominant, dominant, tonic area is resolutions.
Yes.
That's how I'm hearing it. I'm not hearing specific scales or anything. I'm just hearing specific notes that are moving in the scale. So that to me, the way I've learned this is the tonic area is the third of the key, is what's the strong element of the tonic area. So if I'm in C, E is the third of the key,
Yeah.
and that's a very strong tone in the C major, the A minor, and the E minor. So
Yes.
that's right. And why that's a strong tone for the tonic area is you have the F resolving down to the E. So you have this strong resolution.
Yeah.
That's really pointing to the tonic area. Now within the tonic area you have 3 chords, right? You have C minor, C major, A minor, E minor. But they're all relatively more or less stable, right? The C chord is the most stable chord.
Yes.
The A minor is the next most stable, and reason being is the A wants to resolve, but it's a very mild resolution. The E minor, when we get to that, now we have the E, but now we have the B, which is a stronger resolution up to the C. That's why that one is more of a vague tonic sound.
Right, right.
Now when we come to the F, there's 3 chords that have the F in it. You have an F major chord, you have a D minor chord, and then you have a B diminished chord. Right? Now the thing is the F and the D minor, perfectly acceptable. So if the note wants to resolve to the E, if the F wants to resolve to E, then the chord that contains the F wants to resolve to the chord that contains the E.
Right.
So if I'm hearing also, and you're hearing resolutions, right? And all relative, more the chord I'm going to is more stable than the subdominant chord. When it comes to the B diminished chord, that tends to be more in the dominant area, because even though it has the F in it,
Yeah.
it also has the B natural in it. And the B natural is the leading tone. The leading tone really is pulling up to the C. So any chord that has the B in it is going to give a bit of a dominant function to it. That's why the E minor in classical sometimes gets used as a dominant chord, as a substitution for the G chord. You know, so it can work. All right. And then also, here's the thing. Just a little quick aside. Dominant chords are a very special sounding chord, because to me a dominant chord is a triad. And I'll tell you why. Because if you think about it, in every form of music there are dominant chords. But they're not major 7th chords, it's not minor 7th chords, they're not all these fancy chords. Like we're talking about adding a 9 to a dominant chord is a big deal in the blues, right? But there's other styles of music where that happens all the time. But in every style of music, there's a dominant chord.
Oh, yeah.
And so in jazz, if you start doing stuff like this, that G7 sticks out as like it's too plain sounding with the other chords. It's not as thick sounding. Now it sounds more balanced. It sounds like it's in the vein.
Right.
So I am, and this is my own theory, that the dominant chord is actually a way to sneak diminished triads into our music, and it just softens it enough so that we accept it. But basically a G7 is the diminished triad working, and you're getting the two. You're getting that tritone, which is the double resolutions. You got the F going to the E and the B going to the N at the same time. So it's just an interesting way of thinking about all of this stuff. So what this means is when you're playing over changes, you don't have to be aware of every single note. You just have to be aware of where these resolutions are happening and pay attention to them as you're going. There's a little game I play in my lessons, and we can do this if you want to try. Just play something in C major. I don't care what it is. Just play scales or just kind of noodle in C major.
Okay.
Okay? And I'll show you something. Well, no, the single note. Single note, please.
Single note?
Yeah,
Oh.
single note. I'm going to do chords.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So let's see.
Yeah, anywhere. all sounds right.
They all sound good.
Right, so it doesn't matter the chords, is because, and especially what you're doing, which is playing more scales, so those resolutions are happening by default. So it's interesting. It's just something to, but really the thing to me to listen to in music is when you're playing over a change, what does the note you're playing sound like against the chord, and what does it want to do? Does it want to stay where it is, or does it want to move? And that's really what, to me, soloing is about. It's about motion, and then it's about, if it wants to go here, do I take it here, or do I not take it here? Because either way is going to get boring and predictable over time. If you always resolve every note, or if you never resolve any note, you know?
Yes.
So you got to find the yin-yang balance.
Which is why I think of music as language, and how you actually target the notes by creating, by targeting the word by creating more adjectives to describe the word that you want to target, and then substitutions are going into a rhyme book and basically finding another word to say the same thing, type of a deal. And that's why they call it the universal language, is because it is a language. You know, whether we don't necessarily recognize the rhythm and the chordal function and the melodies totally as language, but that's what they are. You know, and then the more you start looking at it, the more music becomes very natural. All right, I put my 2 cents in.
Okay.
You want to put this thing up?
Yeah, put that up.
All right.
Yep.
And
All right, guys, going to focus on me for a second.
All right.
okay, and what that is the standard changes to a 12-bar blues. I believe I wrote it in A out there. But what it's showing is the first 4 bars are a tonic area. And in terms of substitution, and this is the slow change blues, if we were to make it a fast change, we have an A to start out with, and one measure, and then a D. I'm going to put a D9 in there. Well, back to the A now for 2 measures, and that's called the fast change. The reason it works, we're actually substituting the D9 for an A, but it wants to go back to the A.
Yes.
And that's why it works. And that's why it picked up. People picked up on it. Okay. The next area that we hit is the subdominant area, where we would come from the A to a D9. But what you have to think about is what's coming afterwards here. You know, we're going to go back to the tonic area. So we're in the subdominant, and we can put a D sharp diminished in to come right back to the A.
Nice.
Okay, so what we've got now is the first four bars would be, I got further than 4 bars.
Yes, you did. You're on.
I want to add
7,
something in here.
It's not too late, Ken.
It's not too late. Okay. We've got an A chord to start out with. We go to a D9, back to an A, and now we're going to put a 2-5 in before we come back to the subdominant. And we've got 2 bars of subdominant. But thinking of where we're going, we can put this diminished chord in, a D sharp diminished, because it wants to resolve to the next A.
Right.
Okay, so we're substituting over a little 12-bar blues with 3 chords, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different chords now.
Should I put this one up next?
Yeah, actually, that's where we are.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
And on the lower part of the page, you'll notice that's where the substitutions are. And leave that on the screen
Yeah,
for a
so
little
we've got
while
this D sharp to the A, and you have to resolve these correctly. This is D sharp diminished 7, but we can't go to this A. Well, actually, it does. That sounds pretty good, but you can't leap somewhere far away. You want these to be voice-led as closely as possible. It won't sound right.
Yes. Well, so you can hear the setup for the target and the release going into the target and the strike. once the target hits. Resolution.
So what I'm going to do next, if we start out in, let's see, we'll be bar 5. We have D9, and then we have D sharp diminished to A. But before I get to the dominant chord, I'm going to put another 2/5. Bring it back to some acoustic style blues.
Nice.
And the whole thing is this. Oh, I went the wrong way. I get tangled up in there. Let's start.
Yeah, you got tangled up in blue.
Nice.
Something like that.
A nice A6 there.
So let me show you something about the diminished chord, actually, which
Sure.
is interesting. That diminished chord is very interesting, because what that basically is you're taking the one chord, the A chord, and you're moving it down chromatically, except you don't move the root.
Right.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I know. And so you can, that's a great substitution to use on just the one chord, just to go back.
65 years of age,
Yep.
I've been playing for God, and it never dawned on me.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
My
that's,
student's going to get that one.
there you go.
Yeah, Robert Johnson's, one of his famous licks
Yeah.
is this A form here. He slides it back
Right.
and up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he's just making a diminished out of it.
Right.
That's right.
But instead of being like a quick chromatic approach,
Right. You hang with it.
you hang with it.
Nice.
Well, because it's
And he
kind of
does-
all the bluesy notes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he does the same thing up here. This is classic Robert.
Right.
And it's just an A chord, move back, and now it's
Actually, it's A7 chord.
A7 rather,
Yeah.
yeah. To a
Yep.
A
Doing A
diminished.
flat, yeah, as well.
No, you keep the A bass.
Oh, all
Yeah,
right,
you keep the A bass going.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah, because otherwise you go into a D chord.
Right, that's
You go
right.
into D.
Okay.
So one other little thing, just a way to think of substitutions in a way that everyone thinks of them now, because guitarists are notorious for not noticing substitutions, right? They go, oh, I didn't substitute, I just slid into the chord. And you
Yeah.
go to a piano and play that. All right, dun dun, right?
Yeah.
There's two chords you played there. You cannot go, you can't just push your finger sideways, right? So on guitars, we take this for granted. So the idea, the basics, the thing that we do all the time is, right? We just put a little, you just go, well, I'm just putting that D on there. It's just a little sus thing for
Yeah.
But that's a chord substitution.
That's
That's
right.
a chord. And once you understand that anything you do to the chord is a chord substitution,
That's right.
it's a new chord, then you realize, well, everything I'm doing is chord substituting. It's right. Every time if you
Well, sometimes it's also it's because the chord is a twofold situation. For instance, the infamous going to the C. Well, this is really not just a C with a G in the bass. This is also a G sus.
Yeah, sure, you can think of it that way. Oh, yeah, that's where at a certain point naming chords is a waste of time. It's just a sound.
Yeah.
If you have time, I'll tell you a classic story about that. But anyway,
So that must be where this
Yep.
1/4 substitution, and guys are playing that like an A here.
Right, exactly.
And then
Right,
Right.
right. And I just
it's
think
really a
they
D.
probably
You're
just
putting a D in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then they started enhancing it, and you get, you start doing that.
And then the infamous.
Right.
So,
Okay.
Yes.
enough of those
So
substitutions.
where are we at here?
We got
Well, we got to get into Uptown in Blue.
Oh, Uptown in Blue. Okay, Uptown in Blue.
Or do you want to just continue with what we got because we only got a couple more minutes
We only
anyways?
got a couple minutes. How many minutes do we have?
We have a couple minutes, about 2.5.
2.5.
2.5.
Yep.
Okay, let's play this one again.
Okay.
And get that sound going.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a nice little lead.
The A7 blues?
Yeah,
Yep,
the
okay.
substitution blues.
Okay.
Now, we'll keep playing it.
You're listening to the mellow sounds of Ken and Mark. Be sure to come on back to the Guitar Talk Lounge. We'll be lounging around a little bit more, dealing with some more blues and substitutions and that kind of good stuff. I hope you're getting stuff out of this. And be sure to pause it when you need to pause it.